Hello, my name's Kevin Muldoon, and welcome to the fourth episode of Design Systems Rodeo. It's a podcast that focuses on more advanced topics of design systems. Today's episode is True Colors with guest Andrew Summers. I'm your host, Kevin Muldoon. I'm a senior design technologist with Dow Jones. And Andrew Summers, our guest, will be talking about APCA, which is a new a contrast algorithm that will be introduced in WCAG. It is not introduced yet. Uh, People were very concerned earlier on the inner tubes about is that out? It's like no. That's not out yet. Just so you know, but because we are design system architects and professionals, we do not want to be caught flat footed. It does mean some very serious changes, and I'm really happy that Andrew is going to tell us a little bit more about what the changes are and what we should expect. It's actually quite exciting. But first, before I get Andrew out here, let's do the roundup. The interesting thing a week or so ago was the State of Design Systems report released by Supernova. And there was a great panel broadcast on that featuring Donnie D'Amato, Jacob Miller, and Kathleen McMahon. And one of the topics that came up was the single source of truth, which has been quite a topic. And it's really surprising just how many different points of view we have on that. And it does remind me very much of Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you remember that great philosopher of Star Wars, who said that all truths come from a certain perspective. And the three major ways to look at is that, what is the source of truth? Is it the code? Well, if you're a programmer, code. You're definitely thinking code is truth. But what if you're a designer? What is the truth? Well, it's probably your Figma file because that's what you intended. And then there's a third one, which is sort of a mix between the two, where responsibilities for truth is shared. And this has just gotten me thinking quite a bit. And I don't exactly have an answer. I have a lean, certainly, but it's certainly something we should be thinking about. What is the single source of truth? Where is it stored? How is it stored? Who is responsible for it? And the one thing I'm considering right now is that maybe there is no such thing as a single source of truth, but rather a source of intent. That is to say that we definitely can know that there is truth in this is the intention. That much we can solidly say and agree upon. And I'm writing about that, so that will be to come. So anyway, that's the roundup. Not too much else to be talking about, but I did want you to know a little bit more about Andrew Summers. Uh, our guest today, now he has more than 35 years of professional media experience in the Hollywood film industry. He's a recognized industry guru and technology evangelist. He's worked on design, color, imaging, typography, lighting, cinematography, uh, and he's also done print work as well. So it's pretty much any sort of media that you can imagine. He's actually had worked in it and actually contributed to that knowledge base. Um, However, several years ago, Andrew's eyesight became impaired due to early onset cataracts. So what does somebody do if they know color as well as Andrew does, but his eyesight's failing him? Well, he focuses his research toward accessibility. So he reached out to the World Wide Web Consortium and researched new ways to actually improve the WCAG color contrast, which is something we depend upon very, very heavily. So, without further ado, let's get Andrew up on stage and give him a big warm welcome.
Hello. Good morning,
Hello
Kevin.
there. Good morning. Andrew, welcome to Design Systems Rodeo. How are you doing today?
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Um, Awfully early in the morning here on the West Coast, You guys- or in the afternoon over in England, and on the East Coast, I guess about midday. So the miracle of modern technology.
You know what? If only we turned the United States of America on its side, or I think we'd have less time zones. It'd be much easier.
Right, exactly. Uh,
We'll get to work on that. And so listen, a lot of people here at who've been listening to the Design Systems Rodeo, they've heard about APCA, but they may not have investigated a lot of the differences and why they should start investing some time looking into it. Because it's not officially released by WCAG, and maybe we can start with, when do you suppose WCAG is going to release APCA?
um, yeah, not anytime soon.
Okay.
WCAG 3 has right. The we worked on the project in the visual contrast group under Silver, which was the development project for WCAG 3. Um, but WCAG 3 is still very much in development. Um, Optimistic views are 3 to 5 years out. The pessimistic views say 10. Um, so there's there's a lot up in the air there. And there's a lot of other things going on right now in terms of regulatory changes and legislation. We wanted to get ahead of that. So um, I founded a nonprofit called Inclusive Reading Technologies. And in the chat, I posted a couple of links. Inclusive Reading Technologies is basically pushing forward with the research and pushing that research into new areas beyond the web and for other aspects to improve readability for including print, including architectural signs, including other media beyond the web.
Oh, so
So
that is entirely inclusive. I mean, just the experience of reading, no matter where you're reading it from or consuming that from.
and the thing is that there really is not um, a well researched set of guidelines for all media.
Hmm.
I mean, what was put into WCAG 2, as we know, really doesn't work particularly well. It doesn't work at all for dark mode, um, and wasn't really based on a lot of the peer-reviewed research that was available at the time. Um,
You
we're
see a
entirely a
lot of
science.
oh, yeah,
Go ahead.
no, that again, that's a great point, and I think a lot of people that are maybe listening today are wondering, what? WCAG is working perfectly fine for me. And I'm wondering how we might, what would we say to somebody that says, "Hey, WCAG is working totally fine. Why would I even think about investigating APCA or even implementing some of it today?"
Right. Well, I can show you some examples of how um, WCAG2, and I'll show these a little bit later. You could pass WCAG2. It's a little early in the morning here for me. You could pass it,
More
but
coffee.
still be unreadable. It does not does not support actual accessibility.
I see.
It misses a number of very important aspects of human perception with and without impairments. And in some cases, it actually makes things, as an example, somebody with protanopia, which is a form of uh, color vision deficiency, sometimes known as colorblind. Well, that's
Hmm.
not quite correct. Um, because they see reds darker, um, part of how that algorithm works would actually make things worse for somebody with protanopia if we're talking about colors that have a certain amount of red in them. And for instance, it allows red on black. APCA does not. But red on black is something that is almost invisible to somebody with protanopia.
Mm.
Um, and so WCAG 2 really doesn't help these situations. Um, and we wanted to develop something that is a strong, world-class, science-based methodology for giving designers what they need to know in terms of how much contrast you need and what's the minimum that you could use. Because we also want to recognize that if you're a designer, You don't want everything at the highest contrast, and it shouldn't be. You need a visual hierarchy to
Yeah.
guide your eye through the material. So everything should not be at maximum contrast. You need to have those gradations. APCA is designed with that in mind, so that you actually have levels for things like disabled controls or things that are ancillary that you don't want to be, brought attention to. Copyright bugs. You don't want that full
Right,
contrast. It
right.
should be like hidden, right?
Oh,
Should,
absolutely.
because otherwise it's clutter. It's clutter and it's distracting. And
Yeah, that is
so
that is certainly an experience that I've had when I've had some clients say I want WCAG 7:1 contrast ratio, which is all in the 3/4 tones, which meant I had absolutely no room to actually give any visual hierarchy through density at all. But for maybe those who aren't familiar with any of the issues with the WCAG, is there any visuals that you have that might clear things up for some of the people in the audience?
yeah, let me see. There's let me I have to go through and set up my slide here for find the right slide first before I share my screen. It doesn't allow both. Tell you what, I'm kind of queued up to show what's important. Let me show you that first, and I'll get
Oh
to
yeah, we can totally do that.
uh, yeah. Let me let's
There's no
go to
rules here. We rules. We
yeah.
don't need those.
So sorry, I'm having a problem with this Demio app. It's not friendly on Mac. So
We've wrestled with it a little bit, certainly.
yeah, let's try. Okay, so if I share this one, great. Okay, so what I want to talk about is what's important for reading and what's important for contrast when we're talking about design. So in the next few slides, what we're going to look at here is why luminance, or in other words, the black and white aspect of an image, is what's important versus the color aspect. So on the left is the original image. On the right, we've just taken the color away and left it with just the luminance. If we're thinking about like CIE LAB, that would be just the L star part. This is just the color here. I don't know why my slide is moving automatically. It shouldn't be doing that. So on the right here is just the color information without the luminance. On the left, I don't know why it's doing this. On the left is just the luminance. So there's the original. Now, if we just blur the luminance only without blurring the color, that's what we get.
Hmm.
Now, if we go to, this is blurring the color just as much as I was blurring the luminance in the previous slide, but I'm not blurring the luminance.
And
So
I
here
don't
I'm
see any
blurring only
difference.
luminance,
Yeah.
and here I'm blurring only color.
Right.
So there's the original on the left, and on the right, the color is blurred.
Right.
So blurred luminance on the left, blurred color on the right.
Right.
And the reason we see it like this is that um, all of the fine details that we see in the human vision system is held in a luminance channel, the black and white channel, disregarding color. And the color is in separate channels that go to our vision system. And there's very little detail in the color channels. And in fact, they're less than a third the resolution of the luminance channel. And so the importance, we can see it here, like bad design choice. These are the top three are examples of high color contrast, but no luminance contrast. And the bottom one is a high luminance contrast with no color contrast. We need luminance contrast and not color contrast to uh, see fine details, and particularly for things like text, which is a very fine detail. So
And luminance,
what?
just so that some people are aware, a popular color model today is LCH. The L is the
Right,
luminance, or lab,
right.
which is L is the luminance, or even and not exactly quite as true is HSL, where L is supposed to be the
Right.
luminance, but it's anyway, just so people know, luminance.
Yeah. Yeah. So the HSL, the lightness is that's not quite perceptually uniform, and LAB tries to be perceptually uniform, and so does LCH, but they're not perfectly perceptually uniform, which
True.
that's a fine detail we can get to in a bit.
Yes.
But the next aspect of contrast, though, that's important, and that is probably the single most misunderstood aspect of contrast, is that it's not about the color or the difference in luminance as much as it is about the size. So if we look at this slide, the blue line, the thick blue line, that shows the human contrast sensitivity function. And from left to right, as we're going up, we're getting smaller. So as items get smaller, our sensitivity to seeing that smaller, thinner line drops very rapidly by
Yeah.
orders of magnitude. So uh, the gray text on the right, all of it is at exactly the same color.
Hmm.
They're all identical in color. The large headline and all the way down to the very small body text, it's all the same CSS value of C7,
Hmm.
C7, C7, C7. Um, but as we look at this, we see that when we go from large headline down to 700 bold and below that, it very rapidly starts to drop in terms of readability and contrast.
Right.
Um, and this is a key function of how the human vision system looks at fine details and smaller items. So as the weight of a font drops down, we get thinner and thinner fonts. The contrast of that font drops substantially. And so we need to increase the amount of luminance contrast in order to compensate. And that's not being done here. They're all the same color, just to make it clear that at this very low contrast, everybody can read large headline, but nobody can read uh, the body text, which is like a 12 pix, 300 weight font,
Absolutely.
which really
And
needs that
yeah.
needs, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that's absolutely
So
true. The funny thing is that the large headline, which I can read just fine, I think a lot of people can, WCAG would say that's a fail no matter what. Am I correct on that?
right,
Yeah,
so it fails it no matter what. It's actually I think it's technically a fail on APCA just because we're trying not to have people go to too low of a contrast. It would be allowed for like as an ancillary text, but as a
sure.
primary text, you would still want to have a little bit more,
Yeah.
at least for light mode. Now, dark mode is another story.
Yes.
In dark mode, you need to be careful about having too much contrast because that can cause halation. But
Yes.
that's like a whole nother story. Let's see if we have another slide here. So, just going
Halation
along
is a
the line
lovely
with
one,
this,
but we could talk about that one later, certainly. Well,
yeah, sure. Um, uh, to hitting on this contrast is spatial aspect. We have some more samples here. Um, so there's 4 lines of text, 1 pix, 2 pix, 3 pix, 4 pix thick for the stroke.
mhm,
This is at 3:1, which is the WCAG AA for very large text.
yes.
And now this is 7:1. Um, and yeah, it's a little bit darker, but look at the top line, the 1 pix line.
Yes.
Very little change there. So let's look at them side by side. Um, so the difference between 3:1 and 7:1 is not it's not much. And that's partly because when we look at the bottom line, we're actually into contrast constancy, and so we don't really get much of an advantage of going all the way up to 7:1 necessarily.
Mhm.
And at the very thin weights, even at 7:1, 1 pix is so thin it's very hard to read. The 1 pix outline equivalent to this that is difficult to read just because even 7:1 is actually not enough for something that thin.
Well, I
You
tell you
actually
what,
want to have more contrast.
no, absolutely. I think anyone who's seeing this could sort of feel and recognize that. So, Andrew, let's say I'm rather let's say I'm doing a design system. I'm rather new to using this. What would be my first step of actually getting more APCA concepts into my designs that I can share to my designers?
Sure. Let me escape out of here. Um, and all right, there we go. Are we okay? Not screen sharing now. Um, So I put a couple of links in the chat. There's Inclusive Reading Technologies, which is our nonprofit, which is set up the APCA readability criterion, which is a set of guidelines. And it's in a public working draft right now. So it also is not a finalized draft yet, but we're working toward that. And then the link below that is the APCA calculator, which you can find at apcacontrast.com. And before anybody goes there, it's not designed as a production tool. It's a technology demonstrator.
Understood.
So there are a lot of third-party tools out there that are actually fun to use, and Stark has one. There's a number of different tools out there that use the technology, but they're in a more sort of a design sense in terms of developing palettes. The APCA calculator is not for that. It's really just a demonstrator of how the technology works and how color contrast and font size and font weight all work together to help you come up with a design that's readable, and to find out what those levels are going to be to come up with a readable and easy to view design.
That's awesome, and thank you for these resources, and I totally encourage everyone to dive in and give it a try. One thing, if you would permit me, and I do want to ask you one question as well, is that my relationship with APCA was not particularly positive when I first heard about it. I'll tell you that, because it's like, I'm just figuring out WCAG. What the hey? But it became very apparent that APCA was an absolute necessity once I saw body text with a midtone blue link underline. We know what that is. It's a hypertext link in dark mode with a black background. Now, WCAG will say that's a complete pass because it's a midtone value, and I cannot read it. I have absolutely
APCA absolutely.
Yeah.
APCA fails that. Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's because
it's terrible. It feels bad.
So
and yeah,
blue,
blue. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But blue and red,
Mhm.
as the primary RGB colors, they have very little luminance. So when you look at your screen, you look at white, 71% is green in terms of the luminance. Only 7% is blue. Blue is a very dark color in terms of the amount of luminance that is processed by the human vision system. Red is about 21%. Green is 71% of that white. It's the bulk of it. And I know this may seem unintuitive because, when you're using RGB colors, you go like, FFF, they're all
Sure.
same, right? But those FFFs don't mean luminance. They mean for that particular color only. And it's designed so that when you go to FFF, you get white. But the actual brightness in terms of luminance it's only 7% for the blue. Blue always needs to be like solid saturated blues always need to be the darkest of two colors, never be the lightest of two colors. And that's true for red as well, especially for people with protanopia, because it just disappears for them completely. They're not going to be able to see it. So APCA takes these actual human psychophysical aspects of color into account, along with the spatial aspect that I was just showing you. The thinness and thickness of the lines. That's actually the first step in contrast. Then there's technical issues that we haven't even begun to talk about yet, like font smoothing, which blends a font into the background, and that'll actually cause the contrast to drop by 30% or more. So if you have like a 300 weight font and you put font smoothing on it, and you're using a gray color, and it technically meets WCAG 4.5:1, to me, it's invisible. I can't read it at all with my eyesight, and I have low vision. But even people with good vision have a hard time reading something that's messed up like that.
That's amazing. Well, I tell you what, we only have a few minutes, but maybe you could, say, when was that moment that you went, this, I need to dive into WCAG and come up with something better? And
Right.
what was that process like?
So that was April of 2019. And as you mentioned, uh, lost my eyesight and I'm struggling with low vision, but I don't want my years of experience to go to waste. So I started writing a book on color theory. I'm still working on the book. That's probably a few years away. But on my research of doing this, I came along the WCAG2 contrast algorithm, which until then I never even heard of. We
Mhm.
don't use it in Hollywood. We don't use it in the film industry at all.
Right.
And I'm looking at this and I'm going like, they're using the wrong math. Um,
Interesting.
and so I was like, I mean, it's immediately obvious to me that this is not appropriate for purpose. It's not fit for purpose.
Right.
And I told them that in a thread. It's thread number 695 on GitHub WCAG, which became a thread that has 180 messages or something like that on it. And that's some of the early research notes that I did. And
And
then
what
I
year
ended up,
was that? What year did you stand up that GitHub repo?
so that was 2019.
2019.
And
Okay.
right. So, and then I became an invited expert of WCAG, and I worked with the visual contrast group under Silver, and we went through and started developing these guidelines. And like I said, we know that WCAG 3 is an unknown period of time away, but this is a pressing problem because dark mode is becoming more popular, and
Mhm.
we need something that is perceptually accurate to give the designers an opportunity to develop more accessible palettes. And so that's why I founded Inclusive Reading Technologies, and we are
Yes.
developing an independent set of guidelines, not just for the web, but for all media. And so that's the genesis of that.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that. I was I certainly found a great value in it, and as design system professionals, the research that you're doing, our challenge right now is actually embedding that systemically into something that can be shared. So it's WCAG alone, I don't believe is going to get us there. So I think we're aligned on that. I just have to figure out how to actually get what you're doing into a game, as it were, that people can play with confidence and succeed.
And that's, yeah, that's part of what we're doing right now, is finding ways. And when we have more stuff on the horizon that we haven't even released yet, in terms of more advanced ways of predicting contrast, but also a full color model, which is called SACAM, which is in alpha right now,
Okay.
early alpha. But that's something that's basically, it's intended to be an LAB replacement for
Get
use in
out.
design systems. Yeah.
Get out.
So that is some of what we've been working on, because here's the thing, LAB, yes, it's very much a standard from CIE and it's been used for a long time, but it has its own issues and its own problems, its own inaccuracies. It's not a good um, device independent methodology for use with, say, sRGB displays. There's a number of artifacts that come along with it, I guess you might say.
I think I could name a few. I think I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. But
Like
listen,
the
and
blue purple one is one.
oh
So
well that's what OK Lab solved, thankfully.
yes, okay lab does solve that, but the okay lab is still not really perceptually uniform, and
I agree.
that's
I
that's
agree.
a 2 hour
I
conversation at
know
some point.
everything here is like at least a 5-week conversation, but thank you for your 30
Yeah.
minutes. And
Of
listen,
my pleasure, my pleasure.
Andrew, it's been such a thrill. Listen, that is episode 4. That is True Colors. Andrew Summers, creator of the APCA, to be included someday in the future. We don't know when, but we hope soon, than later. Um,
Right.
so anyway, thank you so much, and thank you everybody who joined us today. That is episode 4, Design System Rodeo.